Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me for another, sunset talk. I hope this is a beautiful one. It already looks like it's going to be pretty spectacular. So, the other night, Mirabelle came in to Rebecca and I late at night. And she was having what's called a night terror. And these are different from nightmares. If you're not familiar with them, they are very frightening, but the child doesn't remember them. And often the child can it's a combination almost of sleepwalking. So what happened, she came into our room and her eyes were wide awake, wide open rather, and she appeared awake. Obviously she'd walked in there, but she was very frightened and talking about scary things that were obviously happening only in her mind. Now, before I jump further into this, I want to qualify a word I'm going to use a lot in this video. And that's the word reality. That is a rabbit hole because our mental idea about our world creates our reality. And we could go deep into debating whose is correct and whatnot. But I think I'm just going to be using a common sense approach here, and it should make sense, especially in this first example here with Mirabelle. She was frightened. She was telling us what was happening and asking what we should do. This is not the first time this has happened, and we actually had experiences with this earlier on when she used to have anxiety, especially at night when she was younger. And the feeling you can have when you see somebody lost in their own mind and tortured by their mind is to just pull them out of that. We want to say, this isn't real, you're just dreaming. Snap out of it, come back to me. That feeling of wanting to do that is exacerbated by the fear that we often feel when we see somebody who we love or care about, who is suffering, is going through pain because of something that we perceive to be only happening in their mind. Now, you may have experienced something like this with a child. There's a lot of other places we can see this. Alzheimer's is a great example where somebody will go in and out of reality. And when we're there with them, we can want to say, no, this is the reality. You're not thinking straight. You're wrong. Sometimes we can have a friend or loved one who is lost in an addiction to porn or prescription opiates or news media, whatever it is, that has kind of taken over their mind and it's impacting them in very negative ways. Sometimes there is a powerful, I'm wanting to say a charismatic leader who can capture somebody's mind, or a just very well put together charismatic idea or life philosophy that can be very enticing and can capture people, but is actually pretty damaging to their lives and the people around them. So there's lots of instances where we will see people have their mind captured or taken away by the thoughts or ideas or habits that are ruling over their minds. We want to help them out. I think it's safe to say that everybody who watches these videos is someone who strives towards compassion and would want to help somebody out. And there is a way to help people up. But it's not that way that we first think. That first idea of, I've got to pull this person out of it. I've got to tell them they're wrong. When we do that, that often entrenches the person in the thoughts or the ideas that they're having. We all know, we've all experienced this feeling of, when I have an idea about reality, or the reality that I sense around me, I believe that one to be the correct one, and other people to be mistaken, for the most part. Obviously, we can overcome that with an open enough mind. But for the most part, that's our default. And when our mind is lost in something, whether it's that addiction, or in this case with Mirabelle, that dream, someone telling us that we're wrong, it just doesn't work. But there's another way. So I'm very chilly out today. Might be putting my hood up because my ears are getting very cold. And hopefully Mirabelle and I have this in common, that our lips will start to get cold and we'll start to slur our speech for a while back. We're not going into hypothermia, we're just having our lips get overly cold. The answer is actually in connecting with a person. We have to come to a person in order to have any chance of opening up their mind, of helping them to see where they're torturing themselves, where they're trapped. Now, in Mirabelle's case, this was relatively easy. Rebecca and I had past experience with this, and so even though it could have been frightening, the things that she was saying and the things that she seemed to be sensing, instead we knew we just have to be there with her where she is for as long as she's there. So when she's saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're not saying, you got to wake up, get out of this. We're saying, we're right here with you. We're just going to get through this together, and hold her and be there, present. In a few moments, she woke up more and more, kind of came out of that dream state, and then started to see that that had been only in her mind. And as it is with these night terrors, the whole episode very quickly swept, see, the cold, swept out of her consciousness. And she was fully back and present in the normal reality again. With other people or other situations, it can be much more difficult. You can imagine someone who is addicted to something. Alcohol is a great example of where often if you just even hint to somebody that they might have an addiction going on, boy, you're going to meet resistance in a wall. Because that alcohol addiction, we get very defensive about it. And it won't work to tell the person that they're wrong, that they're hurting themselves, that they're hurting the people around them. Those things may all be extremely true, but they're not going to gain entrance, usually. No rules here, my friends, but this is how the human mind usually works. If we can gain entrance into them by coming to where they are, if we can come there, we can bond with that person, connect with them, find common ground. That's where we can start to gain that entrance and be able to ask questions. I used to know somebody who had probably some borderline Alzheimer's, at least strong dementia. I don't know exactly what it would be classified as, but when I would get together with him, he would tell me the same stories over and over and over. These were stories of his youth, and I basically got to memorize those stories over time. And I could have stopped him and said, You've told me this story 1,000 times. But instead, I would listen. And it brought him great joy to share those stories. And it brought me great joy to see him having the great joy of sharing those stories. And by getting curious, by coming to him like that, instead of telling him he was wrong, I could even start asking other questions about elements inside the story and get side stories. And it was fabulous. It was wonderful. It was a great connection. I knew him until he passed away. Wow. Someday it'd be fun to do a video on natural patterns and how they mimic each other. This really reminds me of up on Lake Superior, the sand, when the waves come in, and especially under the water in Hawaii, the way the waves would shape the sand. So there was an example with Alzheimer's where I wasn't ever going to cure him or change him or pull him back into my reality. But our realities could coexist. And that was just fine. And it brought us both joy. And sometimes that's the way it's going to be. You're not going to pull somebody back out into what we consider to be real reality. It might be somebody that's lost in an idea about the world that's really damaging, and they're breaking away from their friends and their family. Again, there you might not be able to easily pull them out of that. But every little step you can get closer to them, every little bit more connection you can create. You create a bond. And from that bond, questions can be asked, support can be given, ideas can be shared. Part of this has to do with really listening. And this listening has to be genuine. Sometimes, we have this idea about the world, whatever it is. So we believe that the world is this way. And then we meet somebody who believes the world is another way. And we can be so invested in getting them to see the truth of our way. But if we're sure that our way is correct, then why do we have to prove it? We probably, well, hopefully, don't need other people to believe the same thing we do in order to feel secure in our belief. So again, sometimes realities can coexist. And I can look at somebody and say, okay, I really like this person. They believe something that I think is completely wacky. But does that mean that I can't have a connection with them? Does that mean that we can't be friends and go hiking in the woods? I believe the world is round. They believe the world is flat. Great. It doesn't make a difference in our regular lives. And so sometimes if we can remove our ego from our beliefs, then the problem that we thought was there isn't such a problem. But mostly I'm referring here to times when we really do see people believing in something that's damaging themselves, that's hurting themselves or hurting others. And that's where it becomes so vital to do this, to learn how to listen really fully and curiously, and to connect, to come up to somebody and find that togetherness that allows you to both communicate and start to build bridges. For me, I've found over and over again that this has allowed me to help people out of tough places. And it's taught me a lot. And it's helped me to be non-reactive when somebody is having a really tough time, is having a panic attack, is having strong anxiety, I know that I don't have to immediately pull them out of it. I can just be there with them. And as we're there with them, we'll slowly find ways out together 95% of the time. Well, my friends, that's all I have tonight. And I will let you watch the sunset a little bit more with me again, as was the tradition last time. So enjoy. And tell me if you stayed and watched the sunset. All right. Love to you all. Thank you for being here with me in the chill. And I look forward to talking with you in the comments.